I have never told this story to anyone outside of my family. My wife Margaret passed away 11 years ago. She made me promise on her deathbed that I would never speak about what happened on Route 9 in the summer of 1974. I kept that promise for 11 years. Last month, my daughter Sarah sent me a photograph. After I saw that photograph, I understood that Margaret's promise no longer protects us. Nothing protects us. This is what happened to my family on the night of August 14th, 1974, on a highway that I have never been able to find on any map since. My name is Richard. In 1974, I was 34 years old. I worked as a mechanic in a mid-sized town where I had lived my entire life. I was married to Margaret, who was 31. We had 2 children. Sarah was 13. Tommy had just turned 6 in July. We were a normal family. I want to be very clear about that. We were the most normal family I have ever known. We went to church on Sundays. We ate dinner together every night. We did not believe in the supernatural. We did not tell ghost stories. We did not seek out darkness in any form. Darkness found us. The camping trip was Sarah's idea. She had been asking for months. A long weekend, a campsite 3 hours from home. Nothing complicated. Margaret packed for a week. I packed the car the night before. We were ready. The morning we left, everything went wrong before we pulled out of the driveway. Our dog Duke, a golden retriever who had never in 7 years of life shown a moment of anxiety, refused to come out from under the bed. I had to get down on the floor and drag him out by his collar. He whimpered the entire time I was loading the car. When I put him back inside the house and closed the door, he scratched at it so hard and so desperately that he left marks in the wood. I found those marks when we came home. When we came home, Margaret found a dead bird on the front porch. Black feathers, no visible injury, just lying on the doorstep as if placed there deliberately. She moved it without saying anything, but I saw her face when she did it. Tommy, my 6-year-old son, who had been excited about the camping trip for weeks, sat down on the front porch steps and refused to get up. He said he did not want to go. I asked him why. He looked at the side yard and said the man told him not to. I looked at the side yard. Empty, just our fence and the neighbor's oak tree. I told Tommy it was a dream. I picked him up and buckled him into the back seat. As we pulled out of the driveway, Margaret turned around in her seat and looked back at the house. She said, "Richard, I feel like we are forgetting something important." I told her she was being superstitious. She was not being superstitious. The first 2 hours of the drive were normal. The children settled. Tommy fell asleep against his sister. Sarah read her book. Margaret and I talked about nothing in particular, the way you do on long drives when everything feels right with the world. Then we turned onto Route 9. I found Route 9 on a gas station map the week before the trip. It was a shortcut that would save us 40 minutes. A 2-lane road cutting through flat, empty farmland. The map showed nothing along it. No towns, no gas stations, nothing for 30 miles in either direction before it rejoined the main highway. I remember thinking it looked perfectly straightforward on the map. What I did not know was that the gas station owner who sold me that map had tried to warn me. I did not hear him properly over the sound of the radio. He said something as I walked out the door. I thought he said, "Have a good trip." I've wondered for 50 years what he actually said. Route 9 was exactly as the map showed. Flat, empty, 2 lanes. The land on both sides was scrubland. Dry grass and low brush stretching to the horizon. No farmhouses. No side roads. No signs of human presence in any direction. The radio cut out 20 minutes after we turned onto it. Every station replaced by static. I turned it off. The sky began darkening earlier than it should have. I checked my watch. 5:47 p.m. The sun had no business setting for another 90 minutes. But the light was going the way it goes in late evening, flattening and yellowing and withdrawing from things. I noticed Tommy had gone very still in the back seat. Not asleep, just still, staring out the window at the flat, empty land passing by. And the car died. Not a gradual failure. Not a warning. One moment the engine was running normally and the next moment it simply was not. Complete and instant silence except for the Sound of the tires rolling to a stop on the asphalt. I tried the ignition. Nothing. No click. No attempt. The battery read completely dead on the gauge. I got out and looked under the hood. I am a mechanic. I have been a mechanic since I was 16 years old. I know engines the way most men know their own hands. I checked every component systematically. Battery terminals, fuel line, distributor cap, spark plug leads, starter motor connections. Everything was exactly as it should be. There was nothing wrong with that car that I could find. And yet it was completely and totally dead. I stood on that empty highway in the yellowing late afternoon light, and I looked up and down the road. Nothing in either direction as far as I could see. Except, set back from the road on the right side, a structure. A farmhouse. Maybe 200 feet from the road down a dirt path. Old dark wood. 2 stories. A barn behind it in worse condition than the house. Lit from inside by a warm, unsteady light that I understood. Immediately was not electric, oil lamps or candles. One house. The only structure visible in any direction on that entire highway. I told Margaret to stay with the children. I told her to keep the doors locked. I told her I would be back in 10 minutes. She grabbed my arm before I could walk away. She said, Richard, there is something wrong with this place. Please don't go to that house. I told her I had no choice. Night was coming. The children needed to be inside. I needed to find a telephone. She let go of my arm. I walked toward the house. The dirt path leading from the road to the house was lined on both sides with wooden posts, roughly cut, about 3 feet high, spaced every 6 feet or so. On top of each post was a bird skull. Small ones, sparrows maybe, or pigeons, dozens of them. Bleached white, some with fragments of dried flesh still attached. Some with what looked like small pieces of wire or cord threaded through them. I counted 14 posts on each side of the path before I stopped counting and told myself it was a farmer's eccentricity and kept walking. I knocked on the door. It opened immediately. The man standing in the doorway was tall and very thin with white hair that was long, enough to touch his collar. He wore dark clothing that might have been black or might have been very dark, brown in that light. His eyes were pale, almost colorless, like eyes that had been washed of pigment by something other than age. He was smiling at me before I said a word. His wife appeared at his shoulder, shorter than him, heavier, dark hair gone mostly grey, dark eyes that fixed on me with an attention that felt less like interest and more like assessment. I introduced myself. I explained what had happened. Car broken down on the highway. Wife and 2 children waiting. Needed to use a telephone if they had one. Needed any help they could offer. When I said 2 children, the woman's dark eyes changed. I saw it clearly. Something moved in them. Something that was not warmth and was not surprise. I told myself I was misreading a tired old woman's expression. The old man said their name was Aldrich. He said their son had taken the truck to the city for supplies and would not return until morning. He said they had no telephone. But he said we were welcome to stay the night, and his son would help us in the morning. He said it the way people say things they have rehearsed. I walked back to the car and told Margaret. She said no. She said she would rather sleep in the car. I looked at the sky. The light was almost gone. The temperature on that flat, empty highway was dropping fast. Tommy was already shivering in the back seat. I said, Margaret, we don't have a choice. I have replayed that sentence in my head every day for 50 years. We don't have a choice. We walked to the house as a family. Margaret held Tommy's hand. Sarah walked close to me. The old couple stood in the doorway watching us come up the path. The old woman's eyes went to the children the moment we were close enough to see clearly. They stayed on the children. She crouched down in front of Tommy with a speed that seemed wrong. For a woman her age, she looked at him with an expression I have never found the right words for. It was hunger, but it was older than hunger. It was something underneath hunger, something that hunger was just the surface of. She said, what a beautiful boy. She reached out and touched his hair with fingers that were very long and very pale. Margaret stepped forward and pulled Tommy back in one smooth motion. The old woman stood. She looked at Sarah. Sarah, who was 13 and tall for her age and already looking more woman than girl, Sarah stepped behind me without a word. The old man said, "Please come in. You must be tired from your journey." The inside of the house was dim and close, and wrong in ways that accumulated rather than announced themselves. The walls had things hanging on them, bundles of dried herbs or roots tied with dark cord, small objects I could not identify in the low light. The smell was heavy and botanical, with something underneath it that I associated with something animal and dead. The furniture was sparse and dark and arranged in ways that seemed slightly off from how furniture should be arranged. Chairs facing walls, a table pushed into a corner, things placed where they served no obvious practical purpose. Margaret stayed very close to me. She had not said a word since we came inside. The old man showed us where we could sit. The old woman disappeared into the back of the house. For an hour we sat in that dim room while the last of the light died outside and the candles became the only illumination, and the old man asked us questions about our family in a conversational tone that felt like something other than conversation. How old are the children? Where do we live? How long have we been married? Do we have other family nearby? Is anyone expecting us tonight? That last question. Is anyone expecting us tonight? I told him we were expected at the campsite by tomorrow afternoon. He nodded slowly. He said, "So tonight you're here alone?" I said yes. He smiled. At some point, the old woman called us to the table for dinner. Margaret looked at me. I gave her the smallest nod I could manage that meant play along and stay calm. We sat at the table. The old woman brought a large pot from the kitchen and set it in the center of the table. She lifted the lid. I would not spend a long time on this part because some things are better described quickly. Inside the pot were pigeon heads, dozens of them, cooked in a dark liquid that might have been a kind of curry. On some of them, the feathers had not been fully removed. They floated at the surface of the liquid around the small clouded eyes and the small open beaks. Sarah made a sound I had never heard from her before and pushed back from the table and ran from the room. Margaret put both hands flat on the table and said very quietly, without looking at the old couple, "Please just show us where we can sleep." The old man looked at his wife. She was watching the doorway Sarah had run through. She said, "Of course, you must rest. You have a long day tomorrow." The old man led us down a narrow hallway to a room at the back of the house. A double bed, a small cot for Tommy, one window. I examined the window the moment the old man left the room. Nailed shut from outside with heavy nails driven through the frame. I said nothing to Margaret. I checked the door. No lock on the inside. A keyhole on the outside. I said nothing about that either. We got the children settled. Tommy was asleep within minutes. Sarah lay rigidly awake on the outside edge of the bed for a long time before her. Body surrendered to exhaustion. Margaret sat beside me on the edge of the bed and spoke very quietly directly into my ear. She said, "Richard, the way that woman looks at the children." The way she looked at Sarah. "We need to leave this room." I said, "The window is nailed shut." "The door has no inside lock." She said, "Then we need to stay awake all night." I said, "Yes." We both fell asleep. I do not know how. I have tried to explain it to myself for 50 years and the closest I can come is that something in that house wanted us asleep, and we went to sleep, despite ourselves, the way you go under anesthesia despite knowing it is happening. Margaret woke at some point in the deep middle of the night. She reached beside her for Sarah. The bed was empty. She reached to the cot. Tommy was gone. She had me awake before I fully understood what she was saying. Then I understood. I was at the door in 3 seconds. Locked from outside. I stood at that door and I breathed and I did not allow myself to panic, because panic would kill my children and I was not going to let that happen. I pressed my ear to the door. From somewhere further down the hallway, voices, the old man and the old woman, speaking in a low, rhythmic cadence that rose and fell like something being recited, like something that had been recited many times before in exactly this way. I listened. I heard my daughter's name. I heard my son's name. I heard the word sacrifice spoken the way you say a word and you have been waiting a long time to say. I heard the phrase young again repeated in the old woman's voice. Young again, young again, young again. I heard 3 o'clock, over and over. 3 o'clock. We wait until 3 o'clock. I heard the old man say, the car was easy. The road was easy. They came exactly as the others came. I stepped back from the door. Margaret was standing directly behind me. She had heard everything. Her face told me she had heard everything. I had had approximately 2 hours before 3 o'clock. I looked at that door for exactly 3 seconds. I am a mechanic. I have been working with my hands since I was 16 years old. I understand the physical properties of materials. I understand force and resistance and the points at which things fail. That door frame was old dry wood. It was old dry wood attached to old dry plaster over old dry lath. It was 50 years old at minimum and had spent those 50 years in a house with no climate control absorbing and releasing moisture through every season. I hit it once at the upper hinge with my full body weight and my right shoulder. The frame cracked. I hit it again at the lower hinge. The door swung open into the hallway. The hallway was lit by candles, not the few candles that had been there earlier in the evening. Dozens of them, lined along both sides of the floor in glass holders. The kind you see in churches, casting a warm, unsteady light that threw moving shadows up the walls. The hallway ended at a door I had not noticed before, set into the floor at the end of the corridor. A trapdoor, old iron hinges, a heavy iron ring handle. The voices were coming from below it. I went down that hallway and I grabbed that iron ring and I pulled. The trapdoor opened onto stairs going down into candlelight, and that smell, that heavy botanical animal smell that's so concentrated down there that it hit me like something physical. I went down. The cellar beneath that house was larger than the house above it should have allowed. Stone walls, earthen floor. I will not describe what was carved into that floor in detail, except to say that the pattern made my eyes want to look away from it the way your eyes move away from something that should not be looked at directly. In the center of the room, my children sat on the earthen floor back to back, tied together with rough rope at their wrists and ankles. Tommy was not crying. He was beyond crying. He was in that place children go when something has taken them past fear into a stillness that is more frightening than fear. Sarah was looking at me. She had been looking at the stairs since before I appeared at the top of them, as if she knew I was coming, as if she had been holding herself together on the single certainty that I would come. The old man stood to the left. The old woman stood to the right. Between them a low table covered with a dark cloth. Objects on the cloth that I will not describe. The old woman had a knife in her right hand. She was looking at her watch, waiting. I put myself between her and my children without thinking, without deciding. My body made that decision before my mind engaged. The old man looked at me with that smile. He said, "Richard, it is already done. It was always going to be tonight. The road, the car. Everything that happened this morning. It was arranged a long time ago, long before tonight. You cannot change what is already written." I said, "Step away from my children." The old woman looked up from her watch. The other one looked at the table in front of him for most of the time I was talking. When I finished, the one who had been writing looked at his colleague. Then he looked at me. He said, "Sir, we'll send someone out to Route 9 in the morning." 2 officers drove out the following morning. They found the house empty. No old man. No old woman. No candles. No objects. No table in the cellar. The cellar floor was undisturbed earthen floor with no markings of any kind. The county property records showed the house had been abandoned since 1951. No registered owner. No utility connections. No record of occupation for 23 years. The officers found no evidence to support my account of events. The case was closed within a week. Official explanation: exhaustion and stress, producing shared psychological episode in all 4 family members. I moved my family to another state within 3 months. I never went back to that town. I never looked for Route 9 on another map. Margaret and I made an agreement, and we kept it for the rest of our marriage. We did not speak about that night, not to each other, not to anyone. Tommy did not speak again after that night. Not one word. Not in 47 years. Doctors found nothing physically wrong with him. Psychiatrists worked with him for decades. He functions. He lives alone. He communicates in writing when he must. But he has not produced a single spoken word since the night of August 14th, 1974. He was 6 years old. He is 53 years old now. 47 years of silence. Margaret died 11 years ago. On her deathbed, she held my hand and asked me to promise never to speak about Route 9. I promised. I kept that promise until last month. Last month, Sarah called me. She had been going through old family photographs, sorting them, organizing them the way people do when enough time has passed to make the past feel manageable. She found a photograph she had never seen before. She did not know where it came from. It was in the family album between 2 photographs from Christmas 1976. It could not have been there for 50 years without anyone noticing. Sarah had looked through that album hundreds of times. It was not there before. She sent me the image over the telephone. I looked at it for a long time before I understood what I was seeing. It was a photograph of our family, the 4 of us, Richard and Margaret and Sarah and Tommy, sitting at a dinner table I did not recognize, a table in a room I did not recognize. Standing against the wall behind us, the old man and the old woman. The old man with his colorless eyes and his smile that went nowhere. The old woman with her dark eyes fixed on my children, both of them exactly as I remembered them, not aged, not changed. I turned the image over on my phone to see if there was anything on the back. There was a date written in handwriting I did not recognize. The date was not 1974. The date was 14 months ago, 3 weeks before Sarah found the photograph. I enlarged the image on my phone and went through it section by section. In the bottom right corner of the photograph, Tommy, 6 years old, sitting at the table beside Margaret. Tommy, who is 53 years old. Tommy, who has not spoken in 47 years. 6-year-old Tommy sitting at that table looking directly at the camera, smiling. I have looked at that smile for a month now. I know that smile. I first saw it on the old woman's face when she looked at my children on the path outside that house. Patient, ancient, knowing. It is not my son's smile. It has never been my son's smile. And last week I drove to Tommy's apartment for the first time in 2 years. I knocked on the door. He answered. He looked at me the way he always looks at me, quiet, watchful, his eyes that have been somewhere else for 47 years. I stepped inside. I sat across from him at his kitchen table. I looked at him for a long time. Then I said, "Tommy, what happened in that cellar? What did they do to you before I came down those stairs?" He looked at me. For the first time in 47 years, my son opened his mouth to speak. I leaned forward. He said one word in a voice I did not recognize, a voice that was not my 6-year-old son's voice and was not my 53-year-old son's voice, a voice that was older than both of them combined, older than that house, older than that road. He said, "Everything." Then he closed his mouth and smiled, and I understood in that moment that whatever came out of that cellar with my son on the night of August 14th, 1974, had never left.